Hey, y'all, hey, it's me, Christina McCrary on Facebook, aka The Black Mirror, aka Captain Consistent, aka The Mom Friend, aka Petty Level 12. If you don't know where that nickname comes from, you haven't been watching Thursday Night Live. Host of McCrazy's Place podcast on YouTube, and it has an IG and a Facebook. Co-host of Thursday Night Live on YouTube and various YouTubes and various Facebooks live on Thursday nights, and co-host of this wonderful magical podcast, The Mimblewimble Chronicles, which plays on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Audible, and our website, www.lightningboltchronicles.com. It has a Facebook page. It has a TikTok, but where you really want to be is in our Instagram stories, because that's where the interactivity happens. And my beautiful co-host, please introduce yourself.
Hey, magical friends. It's Erica, your friendly Hufflepuff here. I am Poodle Noodle 82 at Instagram. That's it.
Dude, I literally
Thanks for joining us. What?
Yes, thanks for joining us. I just thought of something. So I never say Ravenclaw in my intro, but you always mention Hufflepuff.
Yeah.
So I had my Harry Potter notebook, and I went to this restaurant, and the hostess that was going to seat me saw the notebook and was like, "Oh my God, is that Harry Potter?" And I was like, "Yeah." And we started, of course, talking about Harry Potter, right? So I had on long sleeve, and she goes, "Do you know what house you're in?" And I go, "Yes." And I ripped up my sleeve and I go, "I'm a Ravenclaw." Both her and the girl next door goes, "That is so cool." And they just started laughing.
Yeah, so man.
I had to share.
Well, many people don't know that you have some Harry Potter tattoos.
A few.
I think maybe we can post them like on a reel or something so that people can see if you want to share.
I can do that. Yeah. I have a few.
They're amazing.
Thank you very much. Okay. Getting into this week's Chronicle. We are on chapter 4, which is
so
called
excited.
The Keeper of the Keys. And if you all remember, at the end of the last chapter, there was somebody banging on the door of the shack in the middle of the sea.
Boom!
And so this chapter starts with somebody knocking again and then just knocking the damn door down and coming in.
Yeah.
And this is our second introduction to Hagrid, who we did meet in the first chapter when Harry was a baby. But this whole chapter is essentially just a guidebook to Hagrid. He comes in, obviously he scares the crap out of everyone. So we find out what's in Mr. Dursley's special package. It's a rifle, because he runs out with the rifle, but Hagrid stops that. And then he begins to tell Harry everything he can about the magical world. Why Harry has the scar, who Harry actually is, that Harry's a wizard. And Hagrid tells Harry, Hagrid brings Harry his very first birthday cake.
Yes!
And Hagrid essentially gives Harry the basics and the overview of the magical world. So first he tells him that he is a wizard, and then he tells him that about Hogwarts, where Hagrid is the keeper of keys and grounds. He tells Harry about Dumbledore. He tells Harry about he runs down the basics for Harry of all the things that he has no idea about, and kind of opens up the
Right.
magical world to
Yep.
Harry. The only other character intro we get here is that we learn about Voldemort, although we do not meet him.
Right.
We learn what actually happened to Harry's parents, that they didn't actually die in a car crash.
I know.
We learn that non-magical people are called muggles. We learn that every magical...
In
England, that's true. Because based on Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, here in America, they're called no-mag, which that's so very American, right? Like, no magic,
Yeah.
call them no-mag.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Why did there have to be a different word?
I mean, I don't know. Just probably because they didn't communicate with each other like elevator and lift or trunk and boot or,
Yeah, but magical
weird.
people have this thing called apparition where they can literally apparate from one place to another. So it's not like they need to take airplanes or anything. And they also have flu powder and all kinds of other magical transport. So I don't see like such a big disconnect in the worlds in terms of vocabulary, like why it would be that way.
Yes and no, because one thing that I did notice was if you watch in the Fantastic Beasts movies, when people from the Ministry of Magic here go to whatever, I forget what it's, or there, come to the Ministry of Magic, or whatever entity it is here, they're not particularly welcoming of each other. You know what I mean? It's kind of like when you watch SVU and the FBI and the police don't really get along,
Right. What an example.
I mean, it was the one that popped into my head, but it didn't seem like they were necessarily trying to work together. You know what I mean? Unless
definitely not, especially
levels.
Yeah. I mean, the French ministry seemed very much like you would imagine the French ministry to be.
So there you go.
No-mag.
Yeah. You think that was a good summary, or did I leave anything out?
No, I think that was it. Harry officially gets to read his letter.
This is true. Hagrid hands him his letter, and he actually gets to read it.
He actually gets to open it for the first time, read it, understand its contents, and that's where the whole, like where he came from thing and his privilege gets kind of revealed more.
Yeah.
I love Hagrid. I love this chapter.
It is a great chapter. It's so like it's a whole new beginning for Harry. Like a whole new deal. Like his whole life just changed.
He actually gets to witness with his own eyes another human being making magic, another person creating, like doing spells, things that he's only ever done by accident when he was highly upset or angry or something. And in this case,
no explanation for.
Right. And in this case, now he's aware of the world. He knows it exists, and he's watching someone, albeit illegally, perform magic, which is.
Say, you mean like when Hagrid gave Dudley a little pigtail there?
Well, and I say.
Hagrid tells Harry, he goes, well, I was actually trying to turn him into a pig, but I guess he's enough of one already that all he needed
I love it. I love that so much. Like, yeah, that makes sense. He's already so much of a little piggy that all he needs is a tail. But the way that the Dursleys all freak out over the fact that Dudley has a tail, as if they can't imagine him ever being a pig, but it's like the most perfect thing ever. It's just so fitting.
They're the only ones who couldn't see it.
Yeah, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm shocked." Yeah, no, but I mean, Hagrid is one of my favorite characters. It's such an excellent portrayal of who he is. All of the sweet sides, the kind of naive or innocent side, where he's like, you don't know who you are. You don't know who you
Like, I don't know,
are, and then
who's the one to tell you?
Yeah, and then he's so freaked out that he has to be the one to burst Harry's bubble, right? He's like, I don't think I can be that person. He's like, I'm not qualified, he feels so out of place, but like he's so kind-hearted and he's so naturally magical when it comes to when he pulls an owl out of his pocket. He's just like any other day, like, it's like a piece, like a stick of gum or something. He's like, whoop, and he's got an owl.
Oh my God. I literally wrote that in my thoughts and reactions, that it says he threw the owl out the window as though it was as normal as talking on the telephone. And that gave me a giggle that they compared it to talking on the telephone because, well, duh.
Well, because that's normal for us, right? Like talking on the telephone.
Communicate. What do you mean?
Yeah. I absolutely love it. I love it. What else was it about? Oh, the package, right? So in the previous chapter, we talk about how Uncle Vernon has rations for everyone, and this long, mysterious, unmarked package that nobody knows what it is, and nobody asks questions because that's the Dursley way. Don't ask questions. And in this chapter, we get to find out what's in the package. So, what's in the package, Christina?
It's a rifle.
A rifle.
And it does him absolutely no good.
Why?
And this is another book versus movie moment. So, in the book, Hagrid very easily takes the end of the rifle and ties it in a knot. Just
literally a knot.
Just now in the movie, you see Hagrid just kind of go and like tilt it up, and then it shoots up into the ceiling. But yeah, he very easily just tied it into a knot. No more rifle. Completely useless.
But this is obviously Vernon's. Well, I mean, it's Vernon's very natural way of thinking, and then you can kind of almost compare it to humans' natural, well, some Americans' natural way of thinking, which is, reach for the rifle. Yeah, reach for the rifle, but like that doesn't help anybody, There are far more magical and wonderful ways to deal with arguments, people, to deal with differences. Put down the arms.
But we've already talked at length about how naive Vernon and Petunia are about outrunning the magic, or how they think they're going to get away, that they clearly don't understand how it works, because what? And now you have this man tying your rifle in a knot.
Yeah. Well, when you're so short-sighted, it's hard to really be open to appreciate other things, right?
True. You
It's
don't realize there's
that's the
other
number
things
one.
out there.
Yeah. Yeah. That you could easily just learn to appreciate and be open to.
Another reaction that I had to this. So here's what I wrote down under my reactions and thoughts. I wrote that the whole chapter is essentially an intro to Hagrid. It is.
Yes.
It gives all the pieces and parts of Hagrid. The fiercely protective Hagrid. The really, really big and strong Hagrid. The super sweet, soft, and cuddly Hagrid.
The so soft teddy bear Hagrid.
Yeah, you just get to see all of Hagrid in this chapter. This is your intro to. It's like, I want to say, and that's kind of how it pans out. He's kind of Harry's tour guide into the magical world.
Yeah, well, he's Harry's. I don't want to say. I was gonna say I don't want to use the word crutch, but like, yeah, his guardian angel, his right hand into all of this.
His fairy godfather.
Oh, yeah.
I think Hagrid is Harry's fairy godfather.
Yeah.
It's just not
very much so. And also because, so one of the things that you touched on, well, did you say it in your summary about Hagrid and school?
Oh.
So,
no, go ahead.
Okay, so what we learn in this chapter is that Hagrid was expelled from Hogwarts. So he was a student at Hogwarts when he was a kid. And we find out that Hagrid is expelled in his third year. And after that, Dumbledore allows him to stay on to continue at the school as the keeper of keys and grounds, as the gamekeeper. And that's his job from then on, because he obviously doesn't have a home. Like Hogwarts is his home, right? And because of that, like, Hagrid has also a special connection to Hogwarts, but I feel like he has a very youthful presence about him, and he's a little bit naive in certain ways because he didn't finish school. He didn't continue on to like be part of grown-up conversation per se in the same way that others would if they continue on in school and graduate and all that stuff. Do you agree with that?
By the time he was going to Hogwarts, he was an orphan.
Right.
Well, his mom left. He had a single dad, but his dad died when he was like 12 or something, if I remember right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they don't tell you all that in this chapter, but that plays into the youthfulness and the naivety that is Hagrid. Like, he was an orphan. He got expelled from school, but he got to stay there. So he's picking up things, but he doesn't actually have the formal education or any kind of training or any kind of raising or anything like that. He's very wild. Hagrid's very feral.
Yeah, but he's also, because of that, like, quite street smart, right? He's well connected with all of the ongoings in other parts of the world, right? Like the street side. So
and he's all about like creatures and animals and all that, and so like he has good relationships with other species as well,
right?
So
yeah, and I feel like he has that intuitive nature about him to be able to interact with other species. Like, that's one of the things about him, because he is known in the future we'll find out more that he's known for kind of learning to tame some wild beasts, and he's just like he is, very big and very hairy and very rugged. He also enjoys big rugged creatures.
And has a soft spot for them.
Yes. It's like, oh, my little tarantula.
Yeah,
my
oh, a baby dragon.
yeah.
Oh,
Like
look,
he would befriend any.
Whatever it is that has humongous teeth and claws. Look at it. Isn't it such a sweet baby?
Oh, he knows his mommy. Yeah, me too.
Speaking of how big he is, the second reaction or thought I had was how many times they use the word giant to refer to him.
Oh, yeah.
This is a little bit of a foreshadowing in that I think we've already talked about it. If not, this is a little bit of a spoiler. Spoiler. Hagrid is half giant. And we don't find this out until later. But in this chapter, as he's getting to know Harry, I literally counted. So once they introduce him, they say the giant walked into the room, or the giant this and that, or whatever. And they use the giant 11, 12, 15 times in the next 2 or 3 pages.
Oh my gosh.
And so
I mean,
was interesting to me, it just struck out to me because I was like, wait, nobody knows he's a giant yet, but they're telling you.
Well, I mean, how could you not know when they say the giant squeezed his way into the hut, stooping so that his head just brushed the ceiling. He bent down, picked up the door, and fitted it easily back into its frame.
Wait. Even before that, though, the door was hit with such force that it swung clean off its hinges and with a deafening crash landed on the floor. A giant of a man was standing in the doorway. And then it goes on to the part you just said. He brushed the ceiling, and then they keep saying it. Said the giant, said the giant, said the giant.
And the best part was
the giant chuckled. The giant sat back down. The giant was working. The giant chuckled. Couldn't take his eyes off the giant. The giant took a gulp of tea.
Yeah. And I mean, they do use his name as well.
Yeah, because nobody seemed to explain. He said, I'm sorry, but I still don't really know who you are. This is Harry talking to Hagrid. The giant took a gulp of tea and wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. Call me Hagrid, he said. Everyone does. And like I told you, I'm keeper of keys at Hogwarts. You'll know all about Hogwarts, of course.
No.
And then they go from there. But up until that point, the book continues to refer to Hagrid as the giant until he tells Harry, call me Hagrid, everyone does. And then they start referring to him as Hagrid. But it's 13 times or something over that next 2 pages.
Insane.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
They continue to just say the giant, the giant, the giant. Not the giant man, not, no, the giant. He is the giant. And then my third reaction was about the owl, the one where he says he threw it out the window as if it was as normal as talking on the telephone.
Oh, okay. Yeah, literally, why would you think that that's different or weird, taking an owl out of your pocket and throwing it out the window?
Everybody I know
that's normal. In their
pocket. Duh.
I've got one in my pocket right now. But actually, going back to when you were talking about Hagrid and being called the giant, what I love about it the most is that even though they make this huge deal about Hagrid being a giant, he turns to Dudley and he goes, budge up, you great lump.
Because at least Hagrid has a reason to be so big. The whole reason so big is, as we've already discussed, how close to a pig he is.
Oh my gosh.
Another book versus movie. So this chapter for me had a lot of book versus movie. And one of the things was the fact that in the movie, he's talking to Harry. Well, first, he mistakes Dudley for Harry somehow. And Dudley's like, how? Yeah, like, what?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Like we talked about this too, about some of the other stuff. I feel like they dumbed Hagrid down in the movie.
Right.
So he, like, in the movie, he mistakes Dudley, and Dudley's like, I'm not Harry, and Harry steps out of the shadow, and he's like, I am.
Oh, yeah.
Which, ridiculous, because like you said in the book, he tells Dudley, get your fat ass out of the way.
Yeah.
Sorry. Muggles, we're only Muggles. But he basically tells Dudley, get your big butt out of the way.
Right?
He knows that's not Harry.
He knows that's, I mean, how could he not know that's not Harry? And then what does he tell Harry when he sees him?
Oh.
Like.
Yep, he sure does. He says, because Harry says, you look just like your father, but you have your mother's eyes.
Yeah, so he's unmistakably Harry.
In the books. Because everybody who ever sees Harry says that to him. You look just like your father, except your eyes. You have your mother's eyes. To the point where Harry gets tired of hearing it.
That's like the running thing. Yeah.
Because at one point he's like, yeah, I know, I've got my mother's eyes. Like
he does. At one point later, he does.
They're talking after he's determined who Harry is, and behind them, Dudley has started digging into the cake, and he's eating Harry's very first ever birthday cake. And that's when Hagrid turns around and gives him the pig's tail. But not in the book. In the book, he doesn't touch Harry's cake. So that was a thing.
And the cake, about the cake.
Oh, yeah. I was just going to say, the other thing about the cake is, the only thing that the book says about the cake is that it is a sticky chocolate cake with green icing.
Yeah.
So everything else about the iconic cake, it being pink, the happy birthday being spelled wrong, all of that is them doing whatever the hell. I don't know what that was, because the book literally just says it's a sticky chocolate cake with green icing. Now, there is a point where they say that he's been expelled, and he says that he can't spell Voldemort's name. But in the book, that's all that really, like, alludes to any of that. It doesn't mean that he can't spell happy. And so the fact that in the movie they spelled it Happee, and that every single piece of merchandise has been like that since then, I find that a little bit offensive.
Mind blown. When I reread it and it clicked for the first time, it really clicked. And I'm like, oh my gosh, all of the merchandise is all spelled wrong. They made it so in the movie, literally just to dumb his character down that much more and make him seem that much more naive, I guess, that much more like kind of childlike. And I get it.
But I would call it an oaf.
Yeah, and I get it. I get it for like the visual aspect and stuff and trying to like build his character. But that's not really him. You know, he's so much more intuitive. He's so much brighter than they make him out to be, which is really sad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, another big one, book versus movie.
Yeah.
So it's actually kind of like one of the lines that people say all the time. You're a wizard, Harry. That's how they said it in the book.
Right.
I mean, in the movie. But in the book.
In the movie.
Yeah. in the book, he says Harry, and he pauses because it has like the long dash in between. And then it
Yeah.
says, "You're a wizard." And it's a totally different telling and nuance in the book versus in the movie. And yet the movie is what's quoted all the time. You always, "You're a wizard, Harry." That's a
Yeah.
a thing. And that's not even really how he said it. He was like, "Harry, you're a wizard." Like,
Yeah. There are some liberties taken, I'll say that much.
there very much are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you notice anything else?
No. I mean, I guess the argument in and of itself about him being a wizard and about like in the movie they're in the hut and it's basically Uncle Vernon getting upset and saying, he's not going to that school, we're not going to pay to have some crackpot old fool teach him magic tricks. And then Hagrid gets wildly upset at Vernon for insulting Dumbledore. But I feel like there was so much more. Obviously, there was so much more in the book about the explanation, going deeper into who Harry really is, how things happened in his past, how his parents were murdered. They don't say too much besides like died in a car crash compared to what did Petunia say? They got themselves blown up in the movie, right? So, and that's obviously like a huge trigger because it's like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah. Besides that,
Hagrid gets to tell Harry that he's famous and why.
Yeah.
Harry finds out, I'm sorry, sir, not only are you a wizard, but you are the most famous wizard.
Yeah.
Because that little scar there on your forehead.
And we also find out that Hagrid took him from the ruined house himself.
Yes.
And right? So like,
yep.
Yeah, we can see that because, from the previous chapter, but this is where Hagrid actually tells Harry that information. Yeah. So there's,
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So
no, I think.
What was your takeaway?
I didn't have a takeaway so much as like I love Hagrid. that was my takeaway. I love Hagrid.
So my takeaway.
What a wonderful character.
And you already friggin' touched on it because you always do. Somehow you're always in my brain. So my quote was, "I am not paying for some crackpot old fool to teach him magic tricks."
Yeah.
Oh, honey, you have no idea. Not only will you not be paying for things, but the magic tricks this guy will learn from that crackpot old fool.
Right? And then the craziest part is like, Dumbledore is just fantastic, and we're going to learn so much about him shortly. But just the way that they refuse to let it in, fighting it. It's crazy.
But it's like water. It's gonna go where it wants to go. So
yeah,
you just gotta be prepared.
Oh my gosh. I just glinted, like my eyes just glanced over a line. if he'd once defeated the greatest sorcerer in the world, how come Dudley had always been able to kick him around like a football?
Because you,
If he
sir,
was this,
were not aware that you were a wizard. You did not
yeah,
know your powers, sir.
yeah,
That's why.
yeah.
Because some of it has to do with knowing who you are.
Yes, that's important.
You know what I think we should do?
I think I know what you're going to tell me.
What do you think it is?
Have craft time? Let's make magic!